Well, I'd say Klay Day was a success, Dieter.
Just a little bit, Cyrus.
Just possibly. It was only one of the greatest moments in recent Warriors history. But Dieter, Kurtenbach, and I are going to break that down and so much more. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Dieter, I don't know if you saw any of last night's coverage. I decided to do a live stream.
Nice.
I tapped into the post-game press conferences. Klay came on too late. I couldn't stay for that, but we got Steph. We got Kevon Looney was kind of a random one, even though he had a big night, and he's one of your favorites. Steve Kirk. Anyways, you're there, I believe, at Chase Center.
Yeah.
Dude, break it down, man. I mean, it's one thing to watch it on TV, but what was it like being there? And give us the whole shebang.
It was something, man. I'm not an emotional or sentimental person, and certainly there was a level of general skepticism that I had, just sort of towards the sort of the lovey-dovey, wishy-washy stuff. Understanding 100% that the love that Klay has from this fan base, from any human who's ever interacted with him, the quality of player and person that he is, and certainly, the challenges and tribulations that he's been through over the last 2.5 years. I understood all of that. It did feel like it was, I don't know. I had a lot of questions on if the moment would actually live up to the hype. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah.
And I almost shed a thug tear, man. Like, it was again, like I am cynical, I am disengaged, I am all these things. Like, I was there and I was just like, this is really, like, I empathize so deeply with him. It felt in that moment. I mean, I was standing on the floor during the national anthem. I see him, kind of staring in the half distance, and you could feel the weight of it. You could feel the importance of that moment to him. And in that, you could feel everything that he had to go through to get to this moment. And
right.
That ovation that he got, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it was wild. It was really loud. I'd like to think that it could have lasted a little bit longer, but at last it was pretty. I would have delayed opening tip by 10 minutes. You know how you hear like the Cannes Film Festival, how they give a standing ovation for like 17 minutes or something.
I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah. I wanted that for Klay Thompson, but we got a couple of minutes of really strong, emphatic roars, and the crowd was just waiting with bated breath anytime he touched the ball, and the whole building was absolutely rocking when he had that dunk. The first play was awesome and more of a sigh of relief than anything.
Right.
But that dunk was just this emphatic hell yeah from everybody in the crowd, from everybody on the bench, from Klay Thompson himself. Like, there was the trepidation that sort of goes into, bringing back this once injured player, and you hoping, oh man, hope nothing happens. As soon as Klay did that, you're like, oh great, he's a superhuman again, and we can fully release. And I think it released Klay a little bit too. He was kind of scuffling before that dunk, and after that he goes on his own little run, and he was fine. He was just fine. I don't want to say it was a spectacular performance from him. The dunk was awesome. He was just fine. I mean, -2 in the game. Defensively, it was a struggle early. You'd expect that with the rust. I thought that, physically he moved really well laterally. I thought that obviously he had the ups. He was doing step backs off of a dribble. Like, you would never know that he had been out for 2.5 years, other than he was rushing shots, other than he was kind of, having brain farts on defense early, not later, but early.
Mm-hmm.
It was all in all kind of exactly what you would expect, given everything that we had heard about Klay Thompson leading up into this game, which is to say that the Warriors got back an all-star caliber player who is going to play like that right here and now. Once all this adrenaline wears off, that should be the expectation, that Klay Thompson is going to look like Klay Thompson, 32 years old, from here on out. And that takes this Warriors team from really, really good to probably great, and very well could be the only team in that category when it's all said and done at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone defends the Splash Brothers. I don't know what kind of defense you could schematically set up to stop that if and when Klay comes back. I completely agree with you. Defensively, I feel like he met expectations. Like all those little mistakes and fallacies that you listed were for the norm, right? Par for the course.
Yeah.
But offensively, I mean, dude, I like seeing him conduct those fadeaways was very like old school, right? Those are old school shots that I loved seeing.
Yeah.
The dunk, like you said, I can't imagine what it was like being there because I was jumping out of my seat at home.
It was crazy. It was bonkers.
I'm sure it was. And what I was saying last night, and I made a guest hit on Locked On NBA, is that seeing Klay on the court. I mean, when you think back to the last time we saw him on the court, right? Like, for example, Anthony Davis was still with the Pelicans. Kobe Bryant was still alive. We were not mired in a pandemic. When I saw him on the court, for me at least, for at least a brief moment, I felt a sense of normalcy. It felt like. Yeah, it felt like old times, and there was a strong amount of comfort in that. I was like, wow, like, thank you so much, universe, for this little time machine here that brought me back to a day when I feel like times were a little better. And so the nostalgia was certainly there. What were your thoughts?
That, I mean, thank goodness that it wasn't, we didn't have to reckon with like a lesser version of Klay Thompson.
Yes.
Like that would have been a real bummer, man. But it's not the case. And we'll see lesser versions. We'll see bad Klay at some point. Like, he's not immune from slumps. Like, he is a man. He will go in slumps. Steph Curry was in a slump for a really long time. I think he broke out of it last night, but
yes, he did.
It is, you mentioned nostalgia. That's 100% right. Nostalgia is that sort of twinge when you want to go back to a certain time. Like, you ache to go back to a certain time. And certainly I understand at this moment in time why nostalgia is such a big market. And Klay Thompson for basketball, he just throws you right back into it, man. And what was most interesting to me was it's like riding a bike being part of the Warriors offense if you're Klay Thompson.
Yes.
I mean, he might have forced up a couple of shots. We can be fair about that. He was entitled to do so on this of all days. Maybe Steve Kerr will say something a couple days down the line. If he pulls that crap against Milwaukee, there might be a conversation. But on Klay Day, as it was so aptly dubbed, you're allowed to chuck a little bit. You are Klay Thompson after all. But it is, that offense looked great with him in it. And the defense just added another wing who can defend at a very high level, and his team defense will click in. I mean, I saw it get dramatically better as the game, as the game progressed. Like, his team defense will become his calling card here, where it used to be in reverse, right? He used to be the great on-ball defender, and his team defense was a little, by great defender standards.
Right.
It will flip now because Andrew Wiggins is going to be that ace bulldog on the ball guy. You have Gary Payton II as well. You don't need Klay to do that, which is such a blessing because now he can lock in as this great team defender. And I saw a lot of plays last night that gave me a lot of hope that he can be a truly great team defender once again, if he ever was one in the first place. And offensively, I mean, there was just no rust whatsoever in that regard. I mean, he just knew where to be. He knew how to work off of the screens. He knew how to relocate. I mean, it was so natural to him. And it's a reminder that when Steve Kerr put in this offense, it wasn't just because of Steph Curry. It was also because of Klay Thompson, and it suits Klay Thompson's needs as well. And over the last 2.5 years, we have spent a lot of time arguing about the need for, Steph to be on the ball more and for the Warriors to change up their offense. And I think that's going to look even stupider going forward than it did in the moment. because now you understand what this offense is fully actualized. Without Klay Thompson, it's not fully actualized.
Yeah, true.
Now you can argue the merits of an offensive system that requires Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to work, but damned if it didn't work, and damned if it didn't look beautiful for stretches last night when those two were on the floor. Makes me very sad that Draymond couldn't play in that game, because that is, I guess, the true level of full actualization. But this team has it. This team has what it needs. And when this is the big acquisition.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And when we come back, I do want to talk about that Draymond factor, because that was a wild card at the very last minute. And I'm hoping there's no cause for concern with that. But when we come back, we'll definitely discuss that, and plenty more Klay and plenty of what's to come for the Warriors, and a very rough schedule this week. But first, let's talk about BetOnline. Speaking of nostalgia, speaking of comfort, how about going to betonline.ag? Do you like how I'm talking like it's like almost like a Built Bar ad? It tastes so good. It's but
only the wins though.
That's true. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline.ag remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. That includes Klay Thompson bets. They were taking that. It's a new year and a new updated desktop and mobile website. To sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON. Again, Locked On is the promo code to get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch it on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. Draymond Green last night, that was a surprise. You know, we didn't see his name on the injury report. Just suddenly out of the blue last minute, Bob Fitzgerald was telling the audience, hey, look, he's in the starting lineup. He's gonna play, and he's gonna come out right away because of this what they called calf tightness. Two things that stuck out to me from that. One is kudos to Draymond Green for sucking it up and sacrificing his stats. I mean, just by playing in those 7 seconds, all of his averages plummeted because he didn't put up anything. So kudos to Draymond for caring more about Klay's return.
He did get a personal foul, to be fair.
And he did.
You're right. You're right, though. That's if that doesn't tell you what kind of a winner Draymond is, right? Has Draymond Green ever once thought about where his stats are? No. He wanted to be part of that moment. It was an awesome moment. It was necessary that he was part of it, and that's a great call, though. That's a great call.
You're right. Yeah, and you're right. He's never really cared about the stats, and that's what makes him such a unique player. Like when you judge him, and when we go back after he's retired, the way we judge him is not how we judge pretty much any other player. He's that much of an anomaly. But what are you concerned about the calf tightness? Draymond to me represents toughness. He represents a player that rarely, if ever, misses games. I don't remember him ever missing a postseason game. He might have, but to the best of my recollection,
there were some suspensions in there. But
don't get me started on that. But I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think this is serious? Like, because if he's missing a Klay Thompson return game, is this something to be concerned about, or do you think it's just a day-by-day random thing?
I mean, it happened in warm-ups. He looked like he had tightened up his calf a little bit. I think it's more precautionary than anything else. I think this is that's what the Warriors were saying last night. You heard the press conferences. That's what I heard walking around Chase Center. Like, it's just more precautionary than anything else. They don't want to make a small thing a big thing. And yeah, day by day is probably the best way to categorize it. I know that doesn't, make anyone feel good. But it ultimately is the case. He might wake up this morning and Theragun the bejesus out of it and say that it feels great. He might wake up and it might, he might not be able to walk. It's the NBA. It's very rigorous. And by the way, Draymond Green has been in there very often this season. He's got that hip thing, and now it's a calf thing, and next thing you know, it'll be, just keep sliding on down. This is how it goes, man, when you've put on the kind of miles that Draymond Green has put on, and the Warriors are not in a position where they have to sacrifice the now or the later for now, like at all. So it sucks. It sucks that he wasn't out there, but they won anyway. And honestly, I mean, it was a pretty impressive performance, all things considered. I mean, defensively, they were really stout. They did not have a good offensive game. They spent a lot of time worrying about Klay Thompson, though, maybe Klay doesn't require that level of attention because he just will find his shots. But, I mean, going up against Markkanen at the 3 and then Mobley and Allen, I thought they were fantastic. And maybe my biggest takeaway from the game, if we want to remove the Klay Thompson aspect of it, is, and you know where I'm going here, like people talk all the time, and you and I disagree on this, like the need for a 7-footer. There wasn't a 7-footer to be found on the Warriors side of things, and those 7-footers on the Cavaliers, which have been pretty damn good this year, they weren't really doing much, were they?
No, and again, just to be clear, like I'm not advocating for a 7-footer for the Warriors at the closing minutes of a game. It's just more for the long term. I just want someone in. Yeah, and I just want someone to kind of relieve the pressure that's on the players like Draymond and when James Wiseman comes in. But I totally hear what you're saying. The Cleveland Cavaliers are a great team. I think they're 4th or 5th right now in the standings in the East. I've talked about their. Yeah, and their size, as you just mentioned, with Markkanen into the 3, and I just love that the Warriors have a player like Juan Toscano-Anderson, who is that switchblade type player, or like a Swiss Army knife type player that Draymond typically is. It's just phenomenal to me. And again, you said it last week. Kudos to Bob Myers for putting this roster together. So for a game like this, when Klay comes back, and you're right, early on, I felt like Klay was forcing those 3s up.
Yep.
And then they started falling, and you're just like, my God, 17 minutes of, 20 minutes of play, 17 points. That is efficiency for.
That's the Klay Thompson we all know and love, right? Like that is Klay through and through.
It is. And one thing I love, and I want to give this as a reassurance to Dub Nation, is the fact that even though their 3 stars are all in their 30s now, they don't have the mileage of what 3 superstars in their 30s typically have, just because all these guys played college ball. Klay and Steph played 3 years. Draymond played all 4 years. So they didn't come into the league as 19-year-olds and starting to add that wear and tear. I know college ball you're still playing, but it's only 30 games at the most or on average, including the postseason versus the NBA. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Like, I guess what I'm asking, yeah?
Yeah, I think there is something to that. I mean, you take it one step further with, there is something to be said, though, for the injuries aspect of it, right?
Right.
Like, Steph has missed significant time throughout his career. He missed damn near an entire season.
Yes, he did.
Klay just lost 2.5. I don't know what the calculus is. I really don't know what the calculus is between the benefits of not playing time. Like the benefits of not playing versus the detriment of having to take the injury that, if you watch Klay Thompson last night, you would say that he looked more fresh than injured.
I saw that.
So
I saw that. I saw that.
It's like I don't know how to do that math on it, but I think you're right, man. These guys have a lot of miles, and I think that was a big reason why so many people were so quick to write this team off.
Yeah,
when they started sliding just a smidge, and maybe they were right in those first 2 years, but it was. There's also something to be said for the value of continuity and the value of player-based systems in the NBA. I mean, we don't live in a very static operation. There's not a lot of company loyalty in the world, much less in the NBA these days. It's a players' league, so it's very it's very rare to see in a players' league a bunch of players decide to stick together. There's usually egos and money and women. I don't know. There's a lot of extra stuff that gets in the way of that, and we've certainly seen that here. And we've been lucky. We've gotten it in Golden State in a lesser form than most teams get it. Most teams are, shorter lived, but the trifecta and perhaps the quad, if you include Andre Iguodala, who's back this year, of those four guys, like you're understanding the value. And I think that the love and admiration that we saw last night for Klay Thompson speaks to the value of continuity. Now, the Warriors are very lucky. They're only trying to continue one of the great teams in NBA history, albeit 5-6 years later. But and 3 Hall of Famers, if not 4. But yeah, there might be something, and who knows? I mean, this might just be one last hurrah. We got to be real about this. This might be the one last hurrah. This might be the start of a really impressive second wave. We don't know, but it's fun as hell. They're good as hell, and this team is built to withstand pretty much anything, because think about every other team in the NBA and how poorly they would have done had they been missing one of their 3 All-Stars. They wouldn't have created another one. They wouldn't have found, a guy who can make the mid-level exception with ease on his bench with the 15th man roster. They wouldn't have, they wouldn't have signed an Otto Porter. They wouldn't have signed a Bielitsa, perhaps because they weren't attractive enough to get him in the first place. Juan Toscano-Anderson wouldn't have been developed. Jordan Poole wouldn't be the player that he is today. Jonathan Kuminga wouldn't be a player who is getting run. And everything about this season to date has been really, really, really impressive, and it speaks to sort of that light years ahead nonsense that we did for so long. But damn it, they're certainly a little bit ahead. They certainly have a lead on somebody.
Yes, they do. And when we come back, I agree with everything you just said right there. When we come back, we're going to delve into the week ahead. This is a crazy schedule that they have coming up.
Damn.
And we're going to analyze that and more here on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. So the Warriors play the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow on the road. The Grizzlies just beat the Lakers. That's not saying that much. But then yeah, I'm going to throw those digs all day. But when
it's true, they whooped their ass, man.
They did, and then they got this insane back to back on the road with the Bucks and the Bulls.
Yeah. By the way, Minnesota on next Sunday, which is no cupcake either.
No, it's not. Absolutely. So yeah. What's your takeaway for these next 4 games? What are you seeing coming out from the Warriors?
You better win 2 of them.
Yeah.
Just given the way that this team is playing. Listen, I don't know if yesterday's win over the Cavs was all that impressive. It was a fun day, and I'm glad they won it. I haven't really dove into the was it good or not aspect of things quite yet. I'm looking at a team that shot 40% and 23% respectively and had 24 assists to 14 turnovers. I'm going to guess that it's not an impressive win. But again, the jury is still out. Good defense can win you a lot of games.
Correct.
Also, bad offense from the Cleveland Cavaliers. But the 21-18 turnover to assist ratio there. But this is the toughest 1-2-3 stretch the Warriors have had to face this season. They're all on the road. They are dealing with Draymond Green's injury. They're dealing with having to rest Stephen Curry, or I'm sorry, not Stephen Curry, the perhaps, who's to say, given his thigh contusion or whatever. Klay Thompson's not going to play in both of the back-to-back games. I would presume they play him on the former as opposed to the later, but who's to say? Andre Iguodala could go on a sabbatical whenever he wants. That's been his right this season. Let me put it to you this way. There's a lot that can go wrong here, and I do think that this week for the Warriors now, I think that judgment will be passed upon these games, whereas whatever happened before Klay came back, between Christmas and Klay coming back, you and I were in cahoots. It just didn't really matter that much. We would praise the good stuff, but we were not going to get down on the bad stuff. If they get rocked by Memphis, which I don't think will happen, but if they get rocked by Memphis on Tuesday, we got to come and bash them. A good team doesn't get rocked by Memphis. They need, and here are the keys for that. Leave Klay, leave Draymond, leave Steph out of it. We need more from Wiggins, who is kind
offensively,
of
especially
pulling back a smidge, just pulling back a smidge. Still really good, but pulling back a smidge. But my goodness, anytime Jordan Poole wants to get back really in the swing of things, that would be a blessing. And
it's been a couple
he was
games.
okay. He was okay. He was okay against Cleveland. Don't get me wrong.
I thought he was solid actually, but yeah, not great, but he did what he had to do. Yeah.
Plus 17, 14 in the game, made 2 3, 6 and 12 from the floor. I'm not knocking that game, but he's going. I need a bigger Jordan Poole game at some point over these next 4 games, and preferably in the first 3, just because while Klay is back and now he's the secondary offensive option behind Steph, it'd be great if Poole and Klay and who knows, maybe even Wiggins every now and again could just have a little rapport to where they figure out who's going to be the number 2 on that given night. It's nice to have another option, no question about it, but it doesn't have to be Klay every night. And now it just doesn't have to be Poole every night, just as it didn't have to be Wiggins every night. You have more options, but someone's got to come through on that front, especially if Steph is going to miss games, or if this slump, which he might have busted out of last night, who's to say if it isn't a one-game anomaly, if it's to continue. So Memphis is a big one. Memphis is huge. Memphis sets the tone for this thing. Memphis makes it so that they can go into Milwaukee feeling good about themselves, feeling confident, and that can go a long way against a Bucks team that's given them real trouble over the last, 7 years. And
they have
versus you lose to the rock throwers from Memphis, and bless them, they are a very gifted team with a very idiosyncratic style of basketball. And John Morant is truly a spectacular player.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Those dudes look like they want a fist fight pretty much at any juncture of the game. And again, I really enjoy watching them play. They're very high on my list of favorite teams in all professional sports right now. But you lose that game, now you're going into Milwaukee, of all places, and you feel like you need a win. I don't want the Warriors to be in that spot. I don't think it's advantageous to be in that spot. That's how a little problem becomes a big problem, where you're trying to dig yourself out of it, and just do your business. Jordan Poole needs to come through once or twice, and the Warriors are going to be A-okay. But if Jordan Poole doesn't come through, there's that middle ground there with the Warriors scoring that I start to get a little bit concerned about. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more from Jordan Poole over the next couple.
I'm with you on that. My partner in crime on the other podcast I do, Hall of Famer Rick Barry, he emphasizes repeatedly that Jordan Poole just needs to remember he's not Stephen Curry, and when he remembers that, he does great. But when he's starting to heave 35-footers, it's like, look, you're not Steph. Like, just kind of tone it down a little bit. I feel like that is one thing plaguing this Warriors team offensively the last 3 games now. Even though they won yesterday, they didn't hit the 100-point mark.
They stink offensively right now. If we can be,
they do, and it's mostly 3-point shooting. If you look at the numbers, and Steph, he got out of the slump yesterday. Hopefully it's for good. But everyone else outside of Klay, and Klay didn't have the greatest 3-point numbers. They weren't bad, but they weren't great.
Klay had the best 3-point shooting night of anybody. He went 37%. Right. Steph only went 36%.
Right, but no one else is hitting the 3 right now, and that's a huge problem for them. Andrew Wiggins, who's been amazing this year, you're right. He's taken a step back slightly, like a smidge. Otto Porter Jr. for some reason he's slumping a little bit from the 3, and he's been doing much better normally. Jordan Poole, I feel like sometimes he forces things. That's the one thing I feel like maturity is needed there in order for Jordan Poole to take that leap to the next step, or that we hopefully see, where he's going to be that $20 million sixth man that Andre Iguodala mentioned. Dylan Brooks is out, which is a huge plus. That is great news.
Bad news for lovers of basketball.
That's true. But for Warriors fans, that's great news, because he is a pest when the Warriors play the Grizzlies. And then Thursday, Friday is Bucks Bulls. And like you said, and then Sunday is the Timberwolves. So we'll see what happens. You can follow Dieter Kurtenbach on Twitter at Dieter. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Always a pleasure, my man. It really is, man. It's we're doing this together Wednesday, and then you're doing one tomorrow, or is that the plan?
Yeah, no, sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay, excellent. And thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q. That's our boy Q.
That is, it's everybody's boy at this juncture. There's no Q about that.
with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Thank you, sir. This is always fun. We'll talk soon. Later, everyone.
Let's make it happen.